Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you how I like to color the large flower from the new Here Comes the Sun StampTV kit using Spectrum Noir markers to make it glow. Let me show you the tools and products you need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some ink, and I'm using some of the Memento Tuxedo black ink along with some of the Gina K Designs Fresh Asparagus ink. For stamp images, I'm using this stamp with leaves and then the bold flower, and this is the one that's a line art version of the flower. It's not the solid one, and this is the one that you would color. I'm also using a greeting that says "You are the best," and these 3 stamps come from the Flower Builder stamp set that comes in the new Here Comes the Sun StampTV kit. I'm going to be using the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in white. I'm also going to be coloring with some of the Spectrum Noir markers, and the colors that I'm using today are CR10, DR7, DR5, and CR9. You're going to need some tape and some scissors, and then you're also going to need an embossing folder, and I'm using one of these new embossing folders by Lifestyle Crafts, and this is the woven folder. For cardstock, I'm using, well, I have a couple of the vintage cuts here, and then I'm also going to be using some of our white cardstock, some of our black Onyx, and our red hot cardstock, along with a white card base. And I'll be using some of the 1/4-inch pop dots. I have one sticking there. 1/4-inch pop dots for adhering the vintage cuts onto the card. To begin, I'm going to stamp this bold flower image onto one of the white vintage cuts using some of the Memento Tuxedo black ink. So I'm going to ink that up. And I want to make sure that I match up my lines here, so excuse my head if it gets in the way, but I do want to make sure that I get this as centered as possible. Okay. So now I'm stamping that, putting a little bit of pressure on, and if you're worried because it's a bold image, you can flip it over and just tap it a little bit to make sure you get all of the ink transferred. Okay, so there is my flower image. Now I'm going to start coloring this using the CR9 marker. And I'm going to be using the little tip, the smaller end. I don't want to use the chisel end for this. I want to use the smaller end, the bullet tip. And I just want to color the entire thing. So I'm not going to worry about the lines. I'm not going to worry about anything. I just want to make sure that this is entirely filled in. One of the things that I love about these Spectrum Noir markers is definitely their reds. They've got the clearest, most brilliant reds I've seen in alcohol markers. Just gorgeous. And you'll see what I mean as I begin to add some of these other reds on top. This is a very clear red, and it's a light red, so we're starting with one of the lighter colors. And Spectrum Noir recommends that you start with the lightest color or one of your lighter colors. But of course, you have to play with the markers yourself and develop the techniques that work the best for you. Because depending on what you're doing, you may want to start with a darker color. So you can see this is a very, very big image that I'm coloring here. And what I like about this bullet tip is it really prevents bleeding. I can get into some really tight areas and get close to the edge and be very precise with what I'm coloring, especially when I start to do the shading on an image like this. Although I like brush tips, and Spectrum Noir does offer brush tip alternatives for their markers, I think I'm going to stick with the bullet tip because I haven't had any trouble coloring anything with these. But I do find myself getting into a little bit of trouble with the brush tips sometimes. It's either too juicy or I go outside the lines because I don't have as much control. And remember, I'm not an alcohol marker expert in any sense, so what I do is very, very simple, and anybody can do this. Okay, so I'm almost done here coloring this first color. And now I'm going to show you how I start to shade. And if you want, you can fill in a little bit more if there's any areas that look a little bit shallow. And you'll notice that it might look a little bit streaky when you're coloring, and then all of a sudden it just completely smooths out. I love that. Okay, so that is all I'm going to need that CR9 for. Now my next color that I'm going to work with is this dark red. This is DR7. And again, I'm going to use the bullet tip. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start, I'm just going to pick a couple petals here, and I'm going to start by coloring just around the line between the petals toward the bottom of each petal. And I'm going to work in small sections at a time. So I'm not going to do this color for the entire flower and then go back and do the next color. I'm going to work in small sections. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is looking good. And so by working in smaller sections, it keeps the ink a little bit wetter, it's a little bit easier to blend, and you can kind of see how it's going as you go along. And you can see what I'm doing here. Just adding color just along the bottom of each of these petals. I'll do a couple more here, and you'll get to see the next part. Okay, so there, I've colored a few of the dark parts there. Now my next color is going to be the DR5. This one is a little lighter, and I'm going to color in a circular motion right over that dark part and blend that up into the lighter part, like that. And you'll have to play with this a little bit to get it to look exactly the way you want it to look. Making sure I'm coloring over that dark ink and bringing it up. Just a few more to go here, and then we can move to the next color. You can really almost already see some of the dimension that this is creating. Now to make it glow, you want to bring something in that has just a little bit more yellow in it. I'm just going to go back over those areas now that they're getting really saturated with ink. Okay. So there, now I've done that section. Now my last color that I'm going to use is the CR10, and this is almost like an orange. It's an orangey red, and I'm going to work that into that last color, bringing that up toward the edge. And you can color all the way down onto the other colors too to blend them. The lighter color will pull that darker color up with it. And then that initial red undertone really helps to make this part not look too orange, but it just gives it that glowy look around the edge that I'm looking for. So now you can see these are really starting to glow. Let's do just a couple more. Okay, so we'll do a little bit here and here, 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 and again, I'm going to grab that DR5, which is the next lightest shade up, and working with the red, I'm just blending those together. And then I'm bringing my lightest shade in, the CR10, and once again, blending that all in together to make those petals glow. You can see all the depth you're getting by blending these four colors together, going from the darkest down at the base of the petal to the brightest and most vibrant at the top of the petal. Now let me show you what the flower looks like when it's finished, because it is a little bit time consuming and you've basically got the idea. Now here's a finished one that I did. Same exact technique, you can see, same technique. And this is the color that all the ink dried to. And then I took the Pitt pen and I just bounced color right into the center, just on the little tiny petals in there, just to give it a little bit of brightness in the center of the flower. And you don't have to do that, I just felt like doing that. I thought that that would be fun and it would tie in a little more of the white from the card. Okay, so now that we have this done, the next step is to stamp the leaves in fresh asparagus. So I'm going to ink up the stamp and stamp the leaves. I missed a spot there. And you want to make sure that when you're using the vintage cuts that you kind of lean right over it to stamp it so you can get it right into the center, or as centered as possible. So excuse my head if it got in the way there, but I wanted to make sure that I got it as centered as possible. Okay, so there is my, there are my leaves ready to go. And I am going to take this a step further and I'm going to cut these leaves in half because I don't want to use it all as one piece, although that is very pretty together. Because of my card layout, I want to change it up a bit, so I'm just going to cut it right there and have two different pieces of leaves. So we'll put those aside. Now, my next step is going to be to use this piece of red hot cardstock and the Lifestyle Crafts woven folder. And I'm going to use that in the Cuttlebug. So I'll set that up quick, and I have an A and a B plate here. And then I'm going to position that so it's straight, and it's nice. This woven folder has a lot of straight lines, so you can just line up an edge along one of the straight lines in the folder, and you'll get a nice straight pattern. That and the B plate on top, and feed that through my Cuttlebug, and that will give us a nice woven background, which I think is a really nice Cuttlebug folder for lots of seasons. It's nice in the fall and the winter because it kind of brings to mind warm fabric, but it's also nice for the spring because it kind of reminds me of gauze or a basket, kind of light and airy. Now this piece is going to get mounted onto some black onyx, so I'll do that now using some of this mono adhesive dot adhesive by Combo. And that will get put together here like this. Okay. Now I've cut a strip here that will fit across the center of this card. And this is where I'm going to stamp my greeting. And once again, I'm going to use the Memento because I want the black in the flower to match the black in my greeting. So I'm going to stamp that right here on this one side. You're the best. This is a great thank you kind of card. And then I have a strip of black that I'm going to mount that on top of. And you'll see how simple this card comes together, but it really is pretty with that flower and all that vibrant coloring. This is sticking a little bit here, so okay. So there is that strip. And then this strip is going to go right into the center of the card, so I'll put that on there now. And then this whole piece is going to go on top of my white card base. So I will put that together for you now too. Okay, so there we have that card. Now it's time to lay out the flower on top of this card, and I'm going to do that using some of these 1/4-inch pop dots. So my main flower, the main image here, the flower, is going to go there, and then I'm going to bring a piece of stem this way, and then one coming down this way, so that it's not getting in the way of that greeting. And I'm going to adhere those using some of the 1/4-inch pop dots. So I will put those on the back of all the pieces. I think 3 would be plenty for the flower, and then 2 for the larger of the 2 leaves. And I guess I can put 2 on this one as well. But this gives the card a little bit more dimension. Of course, if you don't have pop dots or you don't want that much dimension, you certainly can just tape these right onto the card front. But I love the look of the little images popping off the card. And it really doesn't affect the postage too much. So we'll get the flower where I want it, and we'll get the first leaf in here, like that. And slide the second leaf right under here, like that. So there is my finished card project. Try coloring these flowers in purples, pinks, and reds for beautiful summer cards. And then try using shades of deep orange, rust, and yellow for making beautiful autumn cards too.